The sun beat down on the Kalahari Plains, baking the sand to a blinding white. A lone figure lay beneath a withered acacia tree, its usually proud mane matted and dull. This wasn't the majestic predator we usually see, the king of beasts, radiating power and grace. This was a fallen king, stripped of his dignity, a victim of a horror that turned the stomach. The white lion, a creature of ethereal beauty, was now a canvas of decay, a gruesome testament to nature's brutal indifference. A closer look reveals the source of the lion's agony, a writhing, buzzing mass clinging to his flesh. Hundreds, perhaps thousands, of tiny black flies, their iridescent bodies shimmering in the harsh light, had burrowed into the lion's wounds, feasting on his living tissue. Their larvae maggots writhed beneath the surface, tunneling through muscle and bone, leaving a trail of putrefaction in their wake. The stench, a potent cocktail of decay and desperation, hung heavy in the air. This infestation wasn't a sudden attack, a flash of violence. It was a slow, relentless assault, a nightmare unfolding over days, weeks perhaps, as the lion's condition worsened. His once powerful frame, weakened by disease or injury, became a buffet for these relentless parasites. The flies, drawn to the scent of rotting flesh, laid their eggs in the lion's open sores, perpetuating a vicious cycle of torment. The maggots, voracious and relentless, consumed everything in their path, accelerating the lion's descent into a living tomb. This scene, as horrifying as it may be, is a stark reality in the wild. Nature is a brutal tapestry woven with threads of survival and decay. It's a constant struggle for resources, for dominance, for the right to exist, while we, as humans, often recoil from such raw displays of vulnerability and suffering. It's a reminder of the delicate balance that governs the natural world. The white lion, a symbol of purity and strength, now lay exposed, stripped bare by the harsh realities of life and death. His fate, a gruesome testament to the relentless march of decay, serves as a chilling reminder of our own mortality. We too are susceptible to the ravages of time and disease, our bodies fragile vessels destined to return to the earth. It's a sobering thought, one that compels us to confront the fragility of our existence and the harsh truths that lie beneath the veneer of civilization. Perhaps, in observing the white lion's suffering, we glimpse a reflection of our own mortality, a mirror held up to our own fleeting existence. The flies, those tiny creatures so reviled, play a crucial role in this macabre dance. They are nature's scavengers, the recyclers, breaking down the dead and returning nutrients to the earth. Without them, the wilderness would be choked by decay, a monument to death. They are a necessary evil, a reminder that even in death, there is a purpose, a cycle of life and rebirth. As we watch the white lion succumb to this gruesome fate, a chilling thought creeps in. We, humans, with all our technological advancements and self-proclaimed superiority, are still tethered to the same primal forces that govern the natural world. We too are subject to the whims of disease, the ravages of time, and the ever-present threat of death. Perhaps in the end, our attempts to conquer nature are futile, our efforts to escape the cycle of life and death merely delaying the inevitable. The white lion's fate serves as a stark reminder: we are all part of the same web, interconnected and ultimately vulnerable. The murky water churned, disturbed by a shadow gliding just beneath the surface. It was a dolphin, its sleek, gray body usually a symbol of grace and intelligence. But today, it was a canvas of pain. A gaping wound marred its side, a festering mess oozing with an unhealthy, yellowish fluid. This wasn't just a scratch. This was a battlefield, a war waged by invisible enemies, a silent invasion that was slowly consuming the dolphin from the inside out. This was a case of muscle infestation, a horrifying testament to the brutal realities of nature. You see, the dolphin wasn't attacked by a predator, it wasn't caught in a net, and it wasn't struck by a boat. Its tormentor was far more insidious, a microscopic parasite that burrowed into its flesh, its tiny body a harbinger of death. These parasites, called mussels, are often found in shallow coastal waters, clinging to rocks and other surfaces. They are harmless in their natural environment, but when they find their way into a wound on a marine animal, they unleash a horrifying transformation. Imagine, if you will, a single mussel, no bigger than a grain of rice, entering the wound. It burrows deep into the dolphin's muscle tissue, its tiny foot anchoring it firmly in place. Once attached, it begins to reproduce, laying hundreds, even thousands, of microscopic larvae. These larvae, driven by an insatiable hunger, spread throughout the dolphin's body, consuming its muscle tissue and leaving behind a trail of destruction. Dolphin, once a powerful hunter, becomes a prisoner in its own body, its movements hampered by the growing infestation. The wound festers, a gruesome spectacle of raw flesh and oozing pus. The dolphin's immune system, overwhelmed by the sheer number of parasites, struggles valiantly but ultimately fails. The once vibrant creature, a beacon of intelligence and beauty, slowly succumbs to the relentless onslaught. You might be thinking, this is nature's way, a brutal cycle of life and death. And you wouldn't be wrong. Nature is indeed a harsh mistress, often unforgiving and ruthless. But there's a dark twist to this tale, a reflection of our own species' impact on the natural world. As humans, we often view ourselves as separate from nature, above its laws. We build walls, pollute its waters, and encroach upon its habitats, believing ourselves to be masters of our own destiny. But the reality is far more complex, far more intertwined. The dolphin's plight is a stark reminder that we are not separate from nature, but rather. The camera zooms in on a face contorted in agony. It belongs to a monkey, its usually bright eyes clouded with pain, its breath ragged. Its fur, once a vibrant coat of reddish-brown, is matted and lifeless, revealing a horrifying truth beneath. A landscape of raw flesh, riddled with angry, festering sores, stretches across its body. This isn't the natural decay of age or disease. This is something far more sinister. This is the gruesome aftermath of an insect infestation. The monkey twitches, trying to scratch at the relentless torment. Tiny iridescent legs scurry across its skin, disappearing into the oozing wounds. A symphony of writhing, buzzing, and clicking fills the air, a soundtrack to the monkey's silent scream. These creatures, invisible to the naked eye when they first arrive, have colonized the monkey's body, feasting on its flesh and turning its living tissue into a breeding ground. Imagine the sheer terror, the unbearable itch, the constant gnawing sensation as these minuscule parasites burrow deeper, laying their eggs in the warm, nutrient-rich environment of the monkey's wounds. Each bite, each scratch, only serves to open new pathways for the infestation, a never-ending cycle of agony. The monkey's once vibrant jungle home, a place of lush foliage and the sounds of life, has become a battlefield. The parasites, relentless and driven by instinct, have invaded this creature's sanctuary, turning it into a grotesque monument to their parasitic existence. But this isn't just a story about insects and their victims. It's a story about the delicate balance of nature, a reminder of the harsh realities that exist in the wild. It's a story that reflects something darker, something we humans often try to ignore. We too can fall prey to infestations, both literal and metaphorical. The unseen forces that prey on the weak, the parasites that exploit our vulnerabilities, exist in every corner of our world. Perhaps the monkey's fate serves as a chilling reminder. We may be at the top of the food chain, but we are not invincible. The line between predator and prey is often blurred, and the cycle of exploitation can touch us all. So, the next time you see a seemingly harmless insect, remember the monkey, remember the suffering, and remember the fragile line that separates us from becoming the prey. The air hung heavy with the scent of decay, and a metallic tang that sent a shiver down your spine. A low growl, guttural and pained, echoed through the dry brush, drawing our attention to a magnificent creature. A white lion, normally a symbol of grace and power, now reduced to a quivering wreck. Its majestic mane, once a crown of snow, was matted and stained, the pristine white fur marred by angry, weeping wounds. It was a sight that stopped the breath, a stark reminder of the brutal indifference of nature. But what we saw next was something truly horrifying. A grotesque, pulsating mass, the color of honey and the consistency of wet sand, covered the lion's back. It moved, a sickening, undulating expanse of buzzing, stinging life. It was a beehive, a living, breathing tumor grafted onto the lion's flesh. Thousands upon thousands of bees, their tiny legs frantically working, their stingers embedded deep within the lion's hide, had made their home on its wounded back. The The sight was both fascinating and utterly repulsive, a testament to the hive's will to survive, regardless of the cost to its host, the lion. Its once piercing gaze now clouded with pain and confusion struggled to rise, its hind legs buckling beneath its weight. Each movement sent a fresh wave of agony through its body, the constant buzzing of the bees a relentless, maddening symphony of torment. Its massive jaws opened in a silent roar, a desperate plea for relief that went unanswered. The lion had suffered a terrible bite, a deep gash that had left its flesh exposed and vulnerable. This wound, a breach in its defenses, had been exploited by the bees, who saw an opportunity, a haven to build their colony. The bees, driven by an ancient instinct, had poured into the wound, sealing it with their own bodies, their own life force. The lion, unable to dislodge them, became their prisoner, its body a living vessel for their colony. The sight was gruesome, the reality of the situation stark. The bees, though small and seemingly insignificant, had claimed a life, their survival intricately linked to the suffering of their unwilling host. The lion, once an apex predator, a king in its own right, now lay at the mercy of these tiny, relentless creatures. It was a chilling reminder of the power of nature, a brutal lesson in the survival of the fittest, where even the mightiest can fall prey to the small.